Savannah Lewis pulled her wool coat tighter around her body, muttering curses at the snowstorm, turning Manhattan into a whiteout painting. Of course, she muttered to herself. The day I have to go to a cocky CEO's penthouse is the day the weather decides to throw a tantrum. She stood in front of the gleaming glass tower that Grayson Reed, real estate mogul and New York's #1 Playboy, called home. Savannah's task was simple: prepare the penthouse for a weekend charity gala, where Grayson would show up, flash his signature grin, and sign big checks while the media fawned over him. As an event planning assistant, she was used to dealing with wealthy clients. But Grayson Reed, he was a different breed, the kind of man who turned every head in the room, and not always for the right reasons. The elevator doors opened, revealing a space so luxurious it made her catch her breath. Marble floors sparkled beneath her boots, floor-to-ceiling glass walls overlooked a city buried in snow, and a modern fireplace crackled in the center of the room. Savannah inhaled deeply, catching a mix of sandalwood and peppermint from somewhere nearby. If I were writing a novel in here, she thought, the heroine would definitely get into major trouble. "You're late," a deep voice called from the spiral staircase. Grayson Reed descended, sleeves rolled up on a crisp white shirt, tousled brown hair looking like he'd just come from the gym. His piercing blue eyes swept over her. Not exactly friendly, but not indifferent either. Savannah raised an eyebrow, refusing to be intimidated. "And the CEO doesn't check his emails. I mentioned the snow was thick, traffic worse, but thank you for the warm welcome." She lifted her iPad, pulling up the checklist. "We have 3 hours to turn this place into a charity heaven. Ready?" Grayson smirked, clearly unused to being challenged. "Do you talk to all your clients like that?" "Only the ones who think they're the center of the universe," Savannah replied sweetly, striding past him to start inspecting the lounge area. "The buffet table goes here. Lighting needs to be softer, and please, no depressing jazz like last time. We're raising money, not hosting a wake." Grayson chuckled, the sound low and unexpected. "You're interesting. What's your name?" "Savannah Lewis, and I'm not here to be interesting. I'm here to work." She glanced at him, trying hard to ignore the way he leaned casually against the bar, like a leading man in a romantic movie. "Focus, Savannah. He's the kind of man who made your mother cry her youth away. But the blizzard had other plans." Just an hour later, news broke. Roads iced over, traffic frozen. Savannah stared out the glass walls, snow falling so heavily the city lights disappeared behind it. "Great. Now what? Sleep in Mr. Reed's kitchen?" Grayson, pouring himself a glass of wine, shrugged. "Or you could stay. This penthouse has enough rooms for an army." He handed her a glass, his eyes glinting with mischief. "Call it a surprise holiday." Savannah hesitated, but the warmth of the fireplace won out over the cold outside. She accepted the glass. "Fine, but if I catch you trying anything, I will use this bottle as a weapon." He laughed, more genuinely this time. "Noted. Now, Miss Lewis, tell me, what does a sharp-tongued event planner do when she's not arguing with clients?" They sat on the long sofa, firelight dancing across the glass walls. Maybe it was the wine, or the strange intimacy of the night, but Savannah blurted, "I write stories, romance novels, the kind where the heroine doesn't fall into the rich guy's arms after one night." She winked, almost daring him. Grayson tilted his head, intrigued. "And the rich guy in your stories, what's he like?" "Let's just say he needs to learn how to love someone other than himself," she replied, taking a sip of wine. "And you? Besides building empires and dating supermodels, what does Grayson Reed do?" He paused, eyes distant. "I grew up in a big house, but it was cold. My father wasn't the kind who stuck around. I guess I learned not to expect much from anyone." He shrugged, as if brushing the story away. "But you believe in happy endings, don't you?" Savannah smiled faintly. "I want to, but real life isn't like books. Sometimes people only get one night, and then it's gone." Maybe it was the wine or the way he looked at her. No longer arrogant, but like he was searching for something. Maybe it was the howling snowstorm outside, shrinking the world to just the two of them. Grayson leaned closer, his breath warm against her cheek. Then if you only had one night, he whispered, what would you write in the next chapter? Savannah didn't pull away. Her heart pounded, but she smiled. I'd write a kiss just so the heroine knows she doesn't need him. And then, as if the two of them had stepped into a page of her novel, he kissed her. Not gently but fiercely, as if trying to say something neither of them could put into words. Clothes fell to the marble floor, the fireplace burned brighter, and the blizzard outside ceased to matter. As Savannah closed her eyes, she thought, this is a mistake, but if it were a chapter in a book, at least it would be one to remember. You're watching Soul Stories, where every tale whispers of love, healing, and hope. If you believe that even the smallest act of kindness can change a life, and that love often arrives when we least expect it, don't forget to subscribe and be part of our journey. Now stay with us. The story is just beginning. Chapter 2, A Goodbye on Paper. Savannah woke up to the cold gray light of dawn streaming through the massive windows of the penthouse. She blinked, her head spinning, and then a wave of panic surged through her. This wasn't her bed. This wasn't her tiny Brooklyn apartment with the rumble of buses outside the window. She was here, wrapped in silky sheets on a strange king-size bed, the faint scent of sandalwood in the air, reminding her of the night before, of Grayson Reed, of the kiss, and of everything that came after. Oh, no, 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 she muttered, sitting up and clutching her head. Images from the night flashed through her mind like a sped-up film reel. The wine, Grayson's eyes, his whispered words, and how she had let herself get swept away. Like the heroine in a romance novel she would write, and then tear up for being too ridiculous. Savannah Lewis, what the hell did you just do? She glanced beside her. Thankfully, Grayson wasn't there. His pillow still bore the faint imprint of his head and a trace of his cologne, but he was gone. Maybe in the penthouse gym or on a call running his empire. Whatever it was, she had to leave. Now, Savannah jumped out of bed and hurriedly grabbed her clothes scattered across the marble floor. Blue sweater, jeans, coat, all rumpled and mocking her lack of control. She scanned the room for her shoes and found them tossed near the fireplace, the very spot where she and Grayson had sat the night before, laughing, sharing things she never imagined she'd reveal to a man like him. She shook her head, trying to chase away the memory of his rare smile, the way he had looked at her like she was something special. Special, my ass, she muttered, tying her shoes. He's Grayson Reed. Today it's me, tomorrow it'll be a supermodel, next week an actress. You are not the main character in his story. She thought of her mother, Clara, sitting at the kitchen table, eyes red, talking about the rich man who walked away when he found out she was pregnant. Savannah had sworn she'd never become her mother, and yet last night she'd forgotten that promise. She needed to leave a period, something final, unmistakable. No room for misinterpretation. She rummaged through her bag and found the small notebook where she scribbled story ideas. Tearing out a page, she scrawled a quick note, her hand trembling slightly. Thanks for the storm. Don't worry, I'm not the clingy type. Enjoy your life. She looked at the words and gave a bitter smile. It sounded like a line from one of her novels, witty, hiding fear beneath the sarcasm. She left the note on the kitchen counter, beside the empty wine bottle from last night, then pulled on her coat. The elevator doors opened, and she stepped in without looking back. As they slid shut, she whispered, "This chapter's over, Savannah. Don't reopen it." Grayson Reed stood in his penthouse gym, sweat rolling down his temple, but his mind wasn't on the treadmill. He'd woken at 5 a.m. to find Savannah still asleep, her hair spread over the pillow like something from a painting. He hadn't wanted to wake her, didn't want the awkwardness of a morning after. Instead, he'd chosen to run, trying to shake the strange feeling in his chest, not quite regret, but not satisfaction either. She was different from the women he usually met. Not after money, not eager for a headline. She was real. The way she teased him about the charity event, the way she talked about the novel she was writing, the way she looked at him, not with awe, but like she was trying to figure him out, like he was a book written in a foreign language. Grayson wasn't used to that. He was used to hungry eyes, not questioning ones. When he returned to the main apartment, the clock read 7. The penthouse was silent, only the wind hissing outside the windows. He walked into the bedroom and saw the bed was empty. "Savannah!" he called out, his voice echoing. No answer. A strange feeling stirred. Not quite disappointment, but something close. He went into the kitchen intending to make coffee when he spotted the note on the counter. Her handwriting slanted slightly, rushed. "Thanks for the storm. Don't worry, I'm not the clingy type. Enjoy your life." Grayson read it and a crooked smile tugged at his lips. "She really is a character," he muttered. He turned the paper over, as if it might hide some secret. Her message was funny and sharp, just like her, but something in it left him feeling hollow. She had left without a number, without a trace, except a slip of paper. He thought back to last night, her laugh when he talked about his lonely childhood, her eyes when she spoke of happy endings in fiction, eyes full of hope and doubt. He'd kissed her, not as a conquest, but because, for a fleeting second, he wanted to feel something real. And now she was gone, like the two of them had only ever been characters in a short chapter. Grayson sat on the couch, the note still in his hand. "She's just a regular girl, one night. Nothing more," he told himself. But as he looked out the glass windows, where snow still fell in quiet sheets, he couldn't shake the image of her smile, the one that made him, for just a second, want to believe in something more than contracts and camera flashes. He opened the drawer and placed the note inside, unsure why he didn't just throw it away. "Take care, Savannah Lewis," he said to the empty room, but deep down he knew he was lying. He didn't want this to be goodbye. Chapter 3. 2 lines and an unfinished page. Savannah stood in the tiny bathroom of her Brooklyn apartment, the flickering fluorescent light casting a pale glow on the pregnancy test in her hand. 2 blue lines, clear, undeniable. Her knees trembled as if the floor might collapse beneath her. "No," she whispered, her voice cracking. "This can't be happening." But the test didn't lie, and neither did her body. The constant nausea over the past week, the unusual exhaustion, and the strange sense that something had changed forever. She sank down onto the edge of the tub, burying her face in her hands. The memory of that snowstorm night in Grayson Reed's penthouse surged back. The wine, the kiss, the moment she'd let herself forget reality. She'd thought it was a mistake, just a fleeting chapter that would close the second she walked away. But now that chapter was writing itself forward, and she had no idea what to do with the next page. Her mother's face came sharply to mind, Clara sitting at the kitchen table with red eyes talking about the wealthy man who had promised her the world and then vanished when he found out she was pregnant. "Men like that don't stay, Savannah," she had once said, her voice bitter. "They take your heart and leave you to gather the pieces." Savannah had vowed she would never end up like her mother, and yet here she was, facing her greatest fear. She thought of Grayson, his arrogant smile, those deep blue eyes, and the rare moment he'd opened up about his cold childhood. He wasn't the father type. He wasn't someone who stayed. The charity gala she had organized in his penthouse just last week was proof. Grayson had shown up, signed big checks, smiled for the cameras, and disappeared into a sea of women. Savannah, standing in the corner, had seen him, handsome, untouchable, and completely out of reach. Contact him now? No way. She didn't want to be a burden. She didn't want her child to grow up with a father who only existed in headlines. She stood up, took a deep breath. "Okay," she told herself, "I can do this. I don't need him." She tossed the test into the trash, but the image of those 2 lines lingered like a shadow. She knew she couldn't stay in New York, where every corner might remind her of Grayson, of that night. She needed a fresh start. 2 weeks later, Savannah sat on a Greyhound bus bound for Boston, her small suitcase, everything she owned, tucked at her feet. She had quit her job at the event planning company, claiming she needed family time. Her boss, a sharp but kind woman, had tried to keep her. "Savannah, you're the star of the team. That Reed charity gala was a hit because of you." But Savannah only smiled, hiding the growing secret inside her. Boston greeted her with the biting chill of late winter, but her mother's tiny apartment in Jamaica Plain was warm like a hug. Clara, her silver hair tucked under a scarf, pulled her into the house without pressing too many questions. "You look tired, Savannah," she said, placing a hot cup of tea in front of her. "Tell me when you're ready." Savannah wasn't ready. Instead, she found a part-time job at the nearby public library, shelving books and helping kids find comic books. The job was simple, the pay enough to keep her from relying entirely on her mom, but it gave her too much time to think. Every night, she sat at the old wooden desk in her childhood room, opened her laptop, and continued writing her romance novel. The heroine, a strong-willed woman named Eliza, wasn't afraid of love, wasn't afraid of being hurt. Eliza was the woman Savannah wished she could be, but every line she typed reminded her of Grayson, the way he tilted his head when she teased him, the way he whispered her name that night in the storm. One evening, with wind howling outside her window, Savannah typed a scene she knew she'd delete later. Eliza looked at the man standing before her, his eyes as deep as the sea, intoxicating, dangerous. "You're not the kind who stays," she said, but her heart didn't listen. He smiled and she knew she had already lost. She closed the laptop, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. "You idiot, Savannah," she scolded herself. "He's not the hero, and you're not Eliza." But as she lay on the bed, one hand resting instinctively over her stomach, she felt a small life growing inside her. And a part of her wondered, if she told Grayson, would he want to continue the story? Clara knocked softly and entered with a plate of freshly baked cookies. "Sweetheart, I don't know what's going on, but I know that look," she said, sitting beside her. "When I was pregnant with you, I was scared too. But you turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Whatever you're facing, you're stronger than I ever was." Savannah smiled weakly, not yet brave enough to talk about the two lines. But her mother's words were like a small lantern in the dark. She hugged her, whispering, "Thank you, Mom." And in her heart, she made a promise. She would do everything to protect this baby, even if it meant never seeing Grayson Reed again. After Clara left, Savannah reopened the laptop and deleted the scene about Eliza. Instead, she wrote a new line. Eliza stood alone, but she wasn't lonely. She carried within her a new story, and she would write it her way. She closed the laptop and looked out the window, where a faint moonlight broke through the clouds. Boston wasn't New York. There were no penthouses, no flashing lights. But here she had her mother, the library, and the baby growing inside her. It was enough. At least she tried to believe it was. Chapter 4. The Encounter in Boston. Grayson Reed stood in the grand lobby of the Boston Convention Center, the crystal chandeliers casting a gleam over his navy blue suit. He was there as the main sponsor of a literary conference, a move his PR team had praised as the perfect way to soften the Playboy image. But the truth was, Grayson didn't care much about books or keynote speeches. He agreed to come because of Ethan, his best friend from college, who had begged him, "You need to do something besides showing up in tabloids for dating supermodels, Gray." The event buzzed with energy, tables stacked with books, authors signing for eager readers. Grayson strolled through the crowd, offering polite smiles whenever someone recognized him. But then he stopped short. In a far corner near the Boston Public Library's outreach booth, he saw a familiar face, Savannah Lewis. She wore an oversized beige sweater, her hair tied up high, as she guided a group of school kids toward a display. But what made Grayson freeze wasn't just her warm, witty smile, the same one from that snowstorm night. It was the undeniable curve of her belly beneath her sweater. She was pregnant. His heart pounded. He didn't even remember walking through the crowd. Suddenly, he was standing in front of her, words catching in his throat. "Savannah," he said, his voice deeper than he intended. She looked up, and for a split second, panic flashed in her eyes. But she quickly composed herself, smiling as if he were just another passerby. "Mr. Reed," she said evenly, "didn't expect to see you here. Since when do you like books?" Grayson didn't smile. He looked straight into her eyes, then down at her belly. "The baby," he said, his voice low but firm. "How far along?" Savannah stiffened. She turned away, pretending to rearrange a stack of books. "6 months," she replied coldly, "but it has nothing to do with you. If that's what you're thinking." Her lie hit him like a gut punch. He remembered that night vividly. December 12th, the snowstorm, and the way she looked at him as she talked about her novel. He wasn't great at math, but 6 months from that night, the timeline matched perfectly. He wanted to press her, to demand the truth, but her expression, guarded and wounded, stopped him. "All right," he said, his voice softer. "I didn't mean to intrude. Just congratulations." He turned to leave, but each step felt like a weight dragging behind him. He didn't believe her. He couldn't. Grayson sat in a cafe across from the convention center, a cold espresso untouched in front of him. He dialed Ethan Carter, his best friend, and an OBGYN, the only person he trusted with this. "I need you to look into something," Grayson said tensely, "but it has to stay quiet." Ethan, catching a break between shifts at the hospital, sighed on the other end. "What now, Gray? Did you get tangled up with another girl?" "It's not like that," Grayson cut in, then briefly explained about Savannah, the snowstorm, and the encounter just now. He ended with, "She says the baby's not mine, but I know she's lying." There was a pause, then Ethan asked, "If she doesn't want you to know, what right do you have to interfere? You don't even know if you want to be a father." Grayson clenched the phone. Ethan knew too well about his cold childhood, about the mansion he grew up in, where his wealthy father had walked out on him and his mother for another woman. Grayson had grown up with his mother's words echoing in his head. "Don't be like your father, Grayson. Don't break someone's heart the way he broke mine." But what had he done? Become a womanizer, allergic to anything resembling love. "I don't know if I want to be a father," Grayson admitted, voice hoarse. "But if that child is mine, I need to know. I can't let them grow up without me. Not like I did." Ethan sighed. "Okay, give me her name and birthday, if you have it. I'll check the records. Quietly, no pressure. But Gray, if that child is yours, you'd better prove you're not your father. Being a dad isn't about writing checks." Grayson nodded even though Ethan couldn't see him. "I know, just help me find out." Savannah sat in the staff lounge at the library, cradling a cup of ginger tea to soothe her nausea. Running into Grayson had been the last thing she expected, and the lie, "The baby's not yours," still rang in her ears. She'd practiced that line 100 times, prepared for the day he might appear. But when she looked into his eyes, she almost couldn't say it. She didn't want him to know, not because she hated him, but because she was scared. Scared he'd laugh, like he probably did reading her note that morning after. Scared he'd offer money to solve the problem, like her own father had done to her mother. Scared that if he stayed, she'd believe him, and then her heart would shatter when he left. She placed a hand on her belly, feeling a tiny kick. "It's just you and me, little one," she whispered, "and that's enough." But the memory of Grayson's gaze, neither arrogant nor cold, but full of questions, lingered in her chest. A small part of her wondered, had she been wrong to push him away? Inside her bag, her notebook lay open to the last page, where she'd been writing about Eliza, the strong heroine she always aspired to be. She picked up her pen and added a new line. Eliza stood before the man she once loved, and she lied. Not because she didn't trust him, but because she didn't trust herself. She closed the notebook, stood up, and returned to work. But as she shelved books, the image of Grayson in that crowd, his eyes locked on her, refused to fade. She told herself, he'll forget, he's Grayson Reed. But deep down, she knew he wouldn't forget that easily. Grayson returned to his hotel, opened the drawer, and pulled out the note Savannah had left the morning after the snowstorm. "Thanks for the storm," he read again, a faint smile tugging at his lips. He didn't know why he had kept it, but now it felt like the only thread connecting him to her and maybe to the baby. He texted Ethan, "Her name is Savannah Lewis. Please check for me." Then he looked out the window, where Boston glowed under golden lights. For the first time in his life, Grayson Reed felt like he wasn't in control. And for the first time, he didn't want to run. Chapter 5. Quiet Footsteps. Grayson Reed sat in his Manhattan office, the city lights spilling through the glass windows behind him, but his thoughts were far away. On his desk lay a report from Ethan, his best friend and trusted OBGYN, confirming what Grayson had already suspected. The due date of Savannah's baby matched perfectly with the night of the snowstorm. There was no doubt anymore. The baby Savannah carried was his. He closed his eyes. The image of Savannah at the literary conference in Boston came rushing back, her rounded belly, her eyes defiant yet wounded as she said, "The baby's not yours." He had wanted to shout, to force her to admit the truth, but something inside him, maybe the memory of his own father abandoning him and his mother, held him back. If he wanted to be part of this child's life, he had to do it the right way, not with money, not with power, but with sincerity. Grayson stood, grabbing his coat. "I'm going to Boston," he said into the phone, cutting off his assistant's question. He didn't know what he would say when he saw Savannah, but he knew one thing. He couldn't sit back and do nothing, not this time. Boston on a late spring afternoon was clear but cold. Grayson stood in front of a modest red brick building in Jamaica Plain, pansies hanging from the windowsills. It was a far cry from his sleek penthouse, simple, warm, like a real home. He took a deep breath, clutching a hardcover copy of Jane Eyre. On the night of the blizzard, Savannah had told him she loved the book, loved how Jane stayed strong even when her heart was broken. Grayson had tracked down a beautiful edition, not to impress her, but to show her he remembered. He knocked. His heart pounded. The door opened, and there she was, wearing a loose sweater and leggings, hair pulled back messily. She froze, her hand instinctively resting on her belly. "Grayson?" she said, voice trembling, part surprise, part defense. "What are you doing here?" He looked at her, not breaking eye contact. "I know the truth, Savannah," he said, voice low but gentle. "The baby is mine." Her face paled. She stepped back, clutching the doorframe like it might hold her up. "Who told you?" "How did you—" She stopped, her eyes flashing with anger. "You investigated me?" Grayson raised his hand, as if calming a storm. "It's not what you think. I asked a friend to check the due date. I didn't force anything, didn't cross any lines. But I had to know." He stepped closer, voice softening. "You're afraid I'm like the men who let you down. I get that. But have you even considered that maybe I want to do the right thing?" Savannah stared at him. Then, as if a wall inside her cracked, tears welled up and spilled over. She turned her face away, wiping her cheek. "You don't understand, Grayson," she whispered. "My mom once trusted a man like you. Rich, charming, full of promises. And he left her. Left her with me. I don't want my child growing up in a fantasy where their father only shows up when it's convenient." Her words cut like knives. Grayson thought of his own father, who had walked out when he was just 5, leaving his mother with overdue bills and a shattered heart. "I'm not your father, Savannah," he said, his voice hoarse. "And I don't want to be mine either. I can't promise I'll be perfect. But I want to try. For the baby. And for you." Savannah let out a sob and covered her face. "You don't know what you're saying," she cried. "You're Grayson Reed. You have everything. Companies, supermodels, flashing lights. I'm just an ordinary woman. I can't let my child hope for something that isn't real." Grayson wanted to hold her, to tell her she wasn't just anything. But he knew she needed space. He stepped back, placing Jane Eyre on the doorstep. "I won't push you," he said softly, "but please keep this. You once said that book made you believe in your own strength. I hope it reminds you that you're worth believing in." He opened the book and showed her a handwritten message on the first page. "For you and for all the unwritten chapters." Then he turned and walked away, every step heavy, like leaving a part of himself behind. Savannah closed the door, clutching the book, tears still falling. She sat on the worn couch in the living room, the smell of her mother's cookies still lingering in the air. She opened Jane Eyre, read his note, and her heart twisted. He remembered. He remembered the night she spoke of that book, of her dream to write. But was that enough? Her mother, Clara, walked in from the kitchen carrying a tray of tea. "Sweetheart, I heard everything," she said, sitting beside her. "He came all the way here. Not everyone would." Savannah shook her head. "You don't understand, Mom. He's Grayson Reed. He doesn't belong in our world. If I let him in and he walks away, I won't survive it." Clara placed a gentle hand over hers, eyes kind but firm. "I was once just as scared, but I had you and I've never regretted it. He may not be perfect, but he's here." Give both of you a chance, even a small one." Savannah didn't reply. She only clutched the book tighter. When her mother left the room, she opened her laptop, staring at her unfinished novel. Eliza, her character, stood at a crossroads. Trust the man in front of her or run away. Savannah typed, Eliza didn't know if she could trust him, but she knew if she didn't try, she'd always wonder what could have been. She closed the laptop, gazing out the window where the golden light of sunset washed over the Boston street. Grayson was gone, but the book in her hands felt like a quiet promise. She didn't know if she'd dare to open it again, but for the first time, she felt a flicker of hope. Small, but real. Grayson sat in his car, watching Savannah's apartment from a distance. He thought of his father, of all the times he'd sworn not to become him. But standing in front of Savannah, he realized doing better wasn't as easy as he thought. He texted Ethan, "She's not ready, but I'm not giving up." Ethan replied almost instantly, "Good, just remember, this time lead with your heart, not your wallet." Grayson gave a faint smile and slipped his phone away. He started the engine and drove off into the sunset, knowing this journey was only just beginning. Still following the story? If this story found you outside of Soul Stories, we invite you home, to where every touching tale begins with truth, hope, and heart. Chapter 6, The Clumsy Man. Savannah sat in the OBGYN office in Boston, the soft daylight filtering through the window, landing on the worn magazine in her hands. She flipped through the pages without reading, her mind tangled. It had been 3 weeks since Grayson stood outside her apartment, leaving behind Jane Eyre and the handwritten words that haunted her nights. For you and for all the unwritten chapters. She'd thought he would disappear afterward, just like the men her mother had always warned her about. But Grayson Reed, it turned out, wasn't so easy to walk away. She heard familiar footsteps in the hallway. The door opened. Grayson stepped in, sleeves rolled up on a light blue shirt, holding a brown paper bag. He nodded at her, his smile faint but lacking the arrogance he once carried. "I'm not late, am I?" he asked, taking the seat across from her. Savannah raised an eyebrow. "What are you doing here, Grayson? I told you, I don't need—" "Just wanted to make sure you and the baby are okay," he interrupted, his voice low but firm. He placed the bag on the table and slid it toward her. "And I brought a few things." She glanced at the bag, curiosity flickering behind her cool facade. Inside were a copy of The Very Hungry Caterpillar and a tiny stuffed bear with button eyes. "Books and a bear?" she asked, half amused. "You think my baby's going to be reading the moment they're born?" Grayson shrugged, a sparkle in his eyes. "I read that babies like bright colors. And the bear. I thought it was cute." He scratched his head, clearly self-conscious. "I didn't know what else to bring." Savannah tried not to smile, but the corner of her mouth betrayed her. "You're a real parenting expert," she said dryly, turning away just as the nurse called her name. Grayson stood up, ready to follow, but she held out a hand. "Stay, I've got this." He nodded, not pushing, but the patience and quiet concern in his eyes unsettled her. Not because of him, but because she was starting to get used to him being there. In the weeks that followed, Grayson became a strange new fixture in Savannah's life. He showed up to nearly every prenatal appointment, always on time, always with something in hand. A box of cookies for Clara, a tiny onesie, or another book, this time Goodnight Moon. He never forced conversation, never asked for anything beyond being present, but his clumsiness, it was nearly maddening. One afternoon, Savannah found Grayson in the hospital parking lot, struggling with a brand new car seat. He was trying to install it in the back of a rental SUV, but a plastic connector had snapped in his hand. "Damn it," he muttered, staring at the broken piece like it had betrayed him. Savannah walked over, hands on her hips. "What are you doing? Breaking the car or the seat?" Grayson looked up, his face flushed with embarrassment. "I was researching how to install a car seat. YouTube said it was easy." He held up the broken part with a sheepish grin. "Clearly I'm not a tech genius." She burst out laughing before she could stop herself. "Grayson Reed, real estate tycoon, defeated by molded plastic? The press would eat this up." She crouched beside him, guiding his hand to the correct latch, even as her belly made it awkward. They worked in silence, birds chirping from a tree nearby. When the seat was finally installed, crooked but secure, Grayson wiped sweat from his forehead. "Thanks," he said quietly. I don't want my kid riding in a junk setup." Savannah looked at him, and something in her chest tightened. He was trying, really trying, but she was still afraid. Afraid this was all just an act, that one day he'd get bored and vanish. That night, back at Clara's apartment, Savannah sat in the kitchen while Grayson fumbled with a bottle she'd handed him for practice. He poured water in, only to spill most of it across the counter. "Damn it, this is harder than I thought," he muttered, grabbing a towel. Savannah couldn't help but laugh. "You planning to feed our baby orange juice? At your pace, that's more likely." Grayson smirked, mock offended. "Hey, I'm learning. Give me a month. I'll be a formula master." He tried again, more carefully this time, but still managed to drip a few drops. Clara, rolling out dough for cookies in the corner, watched them with quiet amusement. She turned to Savannah and whispered, "He's clumsy, but at least he's trying. Not every man would stick around to look ridiculous for his kid." Savannah looked at her mom, then at Grayson, now murmuring to the bottle like it was a difficult business partner. Her heart softened, slowly, like ice melting under sunlight. She remembered the Jane Eyre he'd left, the line he wrote. He hadn't promised her the world, but he was here, awkward, sincere, trying for the baby, and maybe for her. But fear still clung to her. She had seen her mother fall apart over a man like him. If she let Grayson in and he left, she wouldn't just lose him. She'd lose her faith in herself. She stood abruptly, turning away. "I'm tired," she said, her voice sharper than she intended. "You should go, Grayson." He looked at her, a flicker of hurt in his eyes, but didn't argue. "All right," he said, setting down the bottle. "But I'll be back, Savannah. Not because I have to, but because I want to." He left the kitchen behind, leaving only the ticking clock in his wake. After Grayson was gone, Savannah sat at the table, opening her laptop. Her novel still rested at the moment where Eliza faced the man she loved. She typed a new line. Eliza looked at him, her heart unsteady, but fear held her back. She wanted to believe, but didn't know if she had the courage to try. She closed the laptop and placed her hand on her belly, feeling a soft kick. "What do you think, little one?" she whispered. "Should I give your dad a chance?" The baby kicked harder, as if answering. Savannah smiled, though her eyes shimmered with tears. Clara walked in and set a plate of cookies in front of her. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "I'm not saying he's perfect. But the way he looks at you, it's not like your father looked at me." Savannah didn't reply. She picked up a cookie, took a small bite, and gazed out the window, where the moonlight spilled across the quiet Boston street. Grayson was gone for now, but his presence lingered in the book, the teddy bear, the slightly crooked car seat, like quiet footsteps slipping into her life. She didn't know if she was ready to open the door, but for the first time she thought maybe, just maybe, she could try. Chapter 7, A Misunderstanding from a Photo. Savannah sat in her small Boston bedroom, the soft light of her old desk lamp glowing over her laptop screen. She was writing a new chapter in her novel, where her heroine Eliza stood at a crossroads. Trust the man who was trying to change or protect her own heart. Her fingers moved across the keys, but her mind wasn't fully there. Over the past few weeks, Grayson Reed had quietly woven himself into her life. Through small gifts for the baby, his awkward yet sincere appearances at her checkups, and the way he looked at her, like she was a story he wanted to keep reading forever. She had begun to think maybe he really wanted to stay. Her phone buzzed, a news notification. She glanced at it, ready to ignore it, until the headline stopped her cold. "Grayson Reed reunites with supermodel X?" Her heart sank. She tapped the article, even as every part of her screamed not to. The photo loaded. Grayson, seated in an upscale restaurant, facing a stunning blonde. Vanessa Lane, his ex-girlfriend, and a famous supermodel. They were laughing. Grayson leaned in, wineglass in hand. The caption read, "Friday night, the real estate mogul was spotted getting cozy with Vanessa Lane, sparking rumors of a romantic reunion." Savannah felt like she'd been slapped. She slammed the laptop shut, her hands trembling. Images flashed in her mind. Grayson installing the baby car seat, bringing children's books, fumbling with a baby bottle in her mom's kitchen. Now they all felt like lies. God, I'm such a fool, she whispered, tears welling. I was wrong to believe he could change. She opened her phone, typed with shaky fingers. I was wrong to think you could change. Don't come near my child again. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Then she blocked his number. The phone dropped to the table, and she buried her face in her hands, sobbing. She didn't want her child to grow up with a father who showed up when it was convenient. She didn't want to become her mother. She stood, shut the door to her room, and returned to the guarded life she had once tried to leave behind. Grayson sat in his Manhattan office, city lights flickering beyond the glass. He'd just finished a long meeting, but his mind had stayed on Savannah the entire time. He'd planned to fly to Boston that weekend, bringing along a new stacking toy he'd read was great for infant development, but when he checked his phone, Savannah's message cut through him like a blade. I was wrong to think you could change. Don't come near my child again. His chest tightened. He called her immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. She had blocked him. What the hell, he muttered, skimming his inbox and news feeds for a clue. Then he saw it. The article. The photo of him and Vanessa. He cursed under his breath. Friday night, Vanessa had called, pleading to meet, just to talk. He had agreed, thinking it would be a quick meal to close the door on their past. During dinner, she'd hinted at getting back together, her voice smooth with nostalgia. But he had refused immediately. I'm not that man anymore, Vanessa. There's someone else, and a baby waiting for me. They'd laughed politely, parted on friendly terms, and he had thought that was that. But the press, as always, had twisted everything. He wanted to explain, to text, to fly to her right then. But he didn't. A message wouldn't be enough. Savannah wasn't just hurt, she was scared, and he knew why. She had told him about her mother, about the pain of broken promises. If he called now, she'd think he was just trying to defend himself. He had to do more than explain. He had to show her he meant to stay. Grayson called Ethan, his voice tight. She saw the article about Vanessa. She blocked me. Ethan sighed on the other end. I told you to be careful with the media, but Gray, if she means something to you, you have to prove it. With actions, not words. You know what she's afraid of. Grayson nodded, though Ethan couldn't see him. I know, but I'm not giving up. He hung up and stared out the window, thinking about his father, the man who never returned after he left. Grayson would not be that man. Not with Savannah, not with his child. Savannah sat at the Boston Public Library, shelving books while her thoughts drifted far. She hadn't touched her laptop since seeing the article. She hadn't written a single new line in her novel. Eliza, her heroine, now felt like a stranger. Brave, willing to love, willing to trust. Savannah no longer felt like Eliza. She was just a pregnant woman, afraid and trying to protect her heart. Clara noticed the change in her. That night in their small kitchen, she placed a plate of cookies in front of her daughter. Sweetheart, I know you're hurting, she said softly, but are you sure he doesn't deserve a chance to explain? Savannah shook her head, eyes burning. You didn't see the photo? He was smiling at her like we didn't exist. I can't let myself hope again. Clara reached across the table, gently taking her hand. I used to think like you, but I was wrong to let fear keep me from finding happiness. Don't let your baby grow up with a mother too afraid to love, Savannah. Her mother's words hit hard, but Savannah didn't respond. She returned to her room and opened Jane Eyre, the book Grayson had left for her. She reread his handwritten note, for you and for all the unwritten chapters. Tears dripped onto the page. But she closed the book. She didn't want to remember. Grayson sat in his hotel room in Boston. He had flown in that morning but hadn't gone to Savannah's apartment. Not yet. He knew she needed space, and he needed a plan. He opened his laptop and began to write a letter. Not a text, not an email, but a handwritten letter, like the ones he had seen his mother keep. Words that carried weight even when promises failed. He wrote slowly, each word a vow. He didn't know if Savannah would read it, but he had to try. Not to prove she was wrong, but to prove he could stay. not just for the baby, but for her, the woman who was quietly rewriting the story of his heart. Chapter 8. A Letter from a Father. Savannah sat on the worn sofa in her small Boston apartment, the warm yellow light from the floor lamp casting a glow over Jane Eyre on the coffee table. It had been a week since she sent her last message to Grayson, cutting him off after seeing the article about him and Vanessa Lane. She had tried to return to her quiet life, focusing on her work at the library and the soft kicks of the baby inside her. But every night when she opened her laptop to write, her fingers froze. Eliza, her once bold heroine, had vanished. Now there was only Savannah, afraid, uncertain, and hollow. A knock at the door broke her thoughts. Clara, who had been washing dishes in the kitchen, wiped her hands on her apron and answered. "Just mail," she called, returning with a thick white envelope. "For you, Savannah. No return address." Savannah frowned, taking it. The handwriting on the front was slanted and strong, not familiar. She tore it open, her heart racing. Inside was a cream-colored handwritten letter in a small bundle of typed pages, neatly clipped together. She glanced at the bottom of the letter. Grayson Reed. Her breath caught. She looked at her mother. "Mom, I need a minute." Clara nodded, offered a soft smile, and returned to the kitchen. Savannah took a deep breath, unfolded the letter, and began to read. "Savannah, I don't know if you'll read this, but I have to write it. Not to justify myself. Not to ask for forgiveness, but to say what I never had the courage to before. The article about Vanessa was a misunderstanding. She wanted to get back together. I told her no. I told her I'd change, that there was someone else, you, and that I had a child waiting for me. That photo was a single moment, but I know it hurt you. I wanted to explain right away, but a text wouldn't be enough. You deserve the truth from the heart, not from a screen. I never really knew what love was. I grew up in a house that didn't have it. My father left when I was 5, leaving my mother and me behind with nothing but broken promises. I swore I'd never be like him, but I lived like a man who avoided anything close to love. And then I met you, and everything changed. Since the day I learned you were carrying my child, I've wanted to write a different story. For them, and for you. I'm not going to promise perfection. You already know I'm clumsy. Broken car seats, spilled bottles. But I'm learning, and I want to learn for you and for our baby. I'm not asking for your forgiveness right now. Just a chance to prove I can stay. Enclosed is a short manuscript I wrote. It's not as good as your novels, but it's honest. If you read it, I hope you'll see that I'm not the man in the headlines. I'm the man trying to become a father. Grayson?" Savannah placed the letter down, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. Her hands trembled as she opened the pages. Just a few, neatly typed. The handwritten title at the top read, "The Man Learning to Be a Father." It told the story of a man named Elias who grew up in a cold, empty home and never learned how to love. One day he met a woman who was carrying his child. She pushed him away, but he stayed, learning step by step how to become the father he never had. The story ended unfinished with Elias standing on the woman's doorstep, waiting for a chance. Savannah's tears splashed onto the paper, smudging the ink. Grayson's words weren't poetic, but they were raw, real. He had poured his heart into every line. She thought of him, awkward with baby gear, reading children's books, standing in her kitchen with a formula bottle and a hopeful look. She had feared he was like her father. But this letter, this story, it was something her father had never done. Clara came in with a cup of ginger tea. She saw the tears on Savannah's face, then her eyes landed on the letter. "Sweetheart," she said gently, sitting beside her, "I didn't read it, but I can tell it matters. So, what do you feel?" Savannah wiped her eyes, voice hoarse. "I'm scared, Mom. I'm scared that if I trust him, I'll fall apart again. But he wrote this. He tried. Not many people are brave enough to rewrite themselves, right?" Clara smiled, placing her hand over hers. "I used to believe all men were the same. I was wrong. That man didn't just show up with words, he brought his heart. Don't let my fear from the past steal your chance at happiness." Savannah leaned into her mother's embrace, feeling her warmth. She looked at the manuscript on the table. Grayson's words echoed in her mind. I want to write a different story. She didn't know if she was ready to forgive him, but for the first time, she wanted to try. Grayson sat in his Boston hotel room, staring out at the city's twinkling skyline. He had mailed the letter himself, no assistant, no courier, because he wanted it to reach Savannah the most honest way possible. He didn't know if she would read it, or keep it, or throw it away. But writing it felt like the first time he had truly told the truth, to her and to himself. He thought of his father, of the letters his mother once waited for but never received. Grayson had always feared becoming him, but writing to Savannah, he realized he wasn't the same, not because he was better, but because he wanted to be. He texted Ethan, I sent the letter. Now, I wait. Ethan replied almost instantly, good, but if she doesn't respond, don't do anything stupid like fly to Paris to find her. Grayson let out a soft laugh, pocketing his phone. He wasn't going anywhere. This time, he was staying in Boston. Whether or not she opened the door. Savannah lay in bed, Grayson's manuscript in hand. She reread the final passage, where Elias stood outside the woman's home, waiting. She thought about her own story, about Eliza, the fearless heroine who now felt just as lost as she did. She opened her notebook and wrote a new line. Eliza held the letter, and for the first time, she didn't run. She didn't know how the next chapter would go, but she wanted to write it. She closed the notebook, placing Grayson's manuscript next to Jane Eyre. The baby kicked gently, almost like a response. Savannah smiled through her tears. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but tonight, for the first time, she felt a flicker of hope. Small, but enough to believe. That maybe, just maybe, their story wasn't over yet. You're watching Soul Stories, created exclusively for our channel. Leave a comment, we read everyone. Subscribe to support more original, heart-touching tales. Thank you for being part of the Soul Stories family. Chapter 9, The Night Hope Was Born. Rain pounded the streets of Boston, a chaotic symphony against the windows of Clara's small apartment. Savannah awoke in the middle of the night, clutching the side of her bed as a sharp pain tore through her abdomen. She inhaled deeply, trying to stay calm, but the contractions came faster, harder. This isn't right, she whispered, hands trembling as she checked the clock. The baby was early, 2 weeks early. Mom, she called, her voice breaking. Clara appeared instantly, her silver hair tousled, eyes widening as she saw her daughter curled up on the bed. Sweetheart, what is it? She asked, but the look on Savannah's face told her everything. Oh God, okay. I'm calling an ambulance. Just breathe, honey. Stay with me. In the haze of pain, Savannah thought of Grayson. His letter, the manuscript, the man learning to be a father, still sat on her desk beside Jane Eyre. She hadn't answered him, hadn't opened her heart, yet his words echoed in her mind. I want to write a different story, for the baby and for you. She wanted him there, though she couldn't admit it, but she had blocked him, pushed him away. Now all she had was her mother and a child ready to enter the world. The ambulance arrived quickly, speeding Savannah and Clara to the hospital through the rain. Savannah squeezed her mother's hand, each contraction stealing her strength. Mom, I'm scared, she whispered, tears running down her face. Clara stroked her hair, her voice steady. You're stronger than you think, Savannah. She'll be okay, and so will you. Grayson Reed sat alone in his dark office in Manhattan, the glow of the city flickering beyond the windows. He had returned from Boston a few days earlier, still waiting, still hoping for a reply to his letter. He didn't blame her. He'd promised to wait. But when his phone rang at 2 a.m., his heart jumped. Ethan's name lit up the screen. Gray, you need to come to Boston, now, Ethan said, urgency in his voice. Savannah's in labor. Early. She's at the hospital. I just got the call. Grayson felt his chest tighten. Early? Is she okay? The baby? He didn't finish. He was already grabbing his coat. I'm on my way. Thank you, Ethan. He booked the first flight he could find, not caring about the storm or his company. In the taxi to the airport, he thought about Savannah. Her face when she pushed him away. Her rare laugh when he spilled the bottle. Her fear. He had doubted himself. Feared he wasn't enough. Feared he'd become his father. But now all he wanted was to be there. even if she didn't want to see him. The hospital in Boston glowed under sterile white lights, the faint scent of antiseptic lingering in the air. Grayson arrived at 4 a.m., soaked to the bone, hair plastered to his forehead. Ethan met him in the lobby, guiding him to the maternity wing. "She's in active labor," Ethan said, resting a hand on his shoulder. "But prepare yourself. She might not want you in there." Grayson nodded, heart pounding. He stood outside the delivery room, just steps from the door, but it felt like an ocean away. Clara sat nearby, holding a hospital coffee cup, eyes tired but kind. "You came," she said softly, smiling. "I knew you would." "I don't know if she wants me here," Grayson murmured. "She's angry, and I don't want to hurt her more." Clara rose and placed her hand on his arm. "Savannah's my daughter. I know she's scared, but she needs you, even if she doesn't say it. Just be here, even if it's just outside the door." Grayson nodded, feeling like a lost boy. He leaned against the wall, eyes fixed on the door. He could hear the rain outside. He thought of the letter he'd written, the manuscript he'd sent. He didn't know if he'd be a good father, but he knew he wanted to try. More than anything he'd ever wanted before. Inside the delivery room, Savannah gripped the nurse's hand, pain nearly overwhelming her. In a moment of weakness, she had whispered Grayson's name. She didn't even know if he was there. The nurse, a warm-eyed woman with a soothing voice, wiped her forehead gently. "You're doing great, Savannah. The man you asked for, he's here. Do you want me to bring him in?" Savannah bit her lip, tears spilling down her cheeks. She was still angry about the photo with Vanessa, angry he had given her hope. But as the next contraction surged, she realized she didn't want to do this alone. "Bring him," she whispered. The nurse stepped outside and found Grayson. "She called for you," she said with a soft smile. "Go in." Grayson could hardly believe it. He stepped inside, heart hammering. Savannah lay on the hospital bed, sweat-soaked and red-eyed, but still the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. He rushed to her side, taking her hand in his without hesitation. "I'm here, Savannah," he said, voice breaking. "I'm not going anywhere." She looked up at him, pain and relief flooding her eyes. You came," she whispered, squeezing his hand. "Don't leave me, please." "Never," he said, and for the first time, he meant it with every piece of his soul. When the baby girl was born, her cry echoed through the room like a victory song. Savannah, exhausted, smiled as the nurse placed the newborn in her arms. She was tiny, pink, her eyes shut tight. Grayson stood beside her, breath held, afraid to disturb the moment. "What's her name?" the nurse asked, pen poised. Grayson looked down at the baby, then at Savannah. A name floated into his mind, bright and certain. "Hope," he whispered. "Her name is Hope, because she's the first light I've ever seen." Savannah, though drained, laughed softly. "You're terrible at picking names," she said faintly, "but that one's good." She looked from Hope to Grayson, and for the first time, she didn't feel afraid. Clara was called into the room and wrapped her arms around all three of them, tears streaming down her face. "My granddaughter," she whispered, stroking Hope's hair. "And you, Grayson, you did good." Grayson held Savannah's hand, the world narrowing to just this moment. Her, their daughter, and him. He thought about that snowy night, the letter, the almost goodbyes, the times he nearly walked away. But now, looking at the little girl in Savannah's arms, he knew he'd found his reason to stay. Chapter 10. A small apartment, a new page. The small apartment near Boston Common echoed with the laughter of Hope, a 1-year-old with rosy cheeks and a mop of curly hair, crawling across the wooden floor after a red plastic ball. Savannah sat on the couch, laptop on her lap, typing the final chapter of the romance novel she'd spent the past year writing. She glanced up, smiling as Hope stumbled, but immediately resumed crawling without hesitation. "You're a little warrior, aren't you?" she said warmly. A year had passed since that rainy night when Hope was born, since Grayson held her hand in the delivery room and named their daughter Hope, the first light he ever saw. They hadn't gone back to his luxurious Manhattan penthouse or settled into a grand estate. Instead, they chose this place, a 2-bedroom apartment with cream-colored walls and windows that looked out over the park, where the maples were beginning to turn gold. It wasn't perfect. But it was home. It was where they were writing a new story. Grayson stepped out of the kitchen, apron askew, flour streaked across his cheek. He held up a baking tray, but the faint scent of something burned made Savannah arch a brow. "Seriously, Grayson Reed," she said, closing her laptop. "Were you planning to poison us?" He chuckled, sheepish but still charming. "Hey, I'm improving. Only half was burnt last time." He set the tray down and plopped onto the floor beside Hope, scooping her up and planting a loud kiss on her cheek. Hope giggled and smacked him on the nose. "See? Daddy's getting better, huh, kiddo?" Savannah shook her head, heart full. Grayson had fully embraced his role as the clumsy dad, waking up early to change diapers, singing off-key lullabies, and patiently enduring Hope's habit of coloring on his designer shirts. He still ran his company remotely, flying back to Manhattan when needed, but Boston had become home, because Boston had Savannah and Hope. She got up and headed to the kitchen to rescue dinner. After giving birth, Savannah had launched a small event planning business, specializing in intimate gatherings and literary panels. It didn't make her millions, but it made her happy, and it gave her time to finish her novel. A novel inspired by their story, a woman afraid to love and a man learning to stay. She had submitted the manuscript to a publisher the week before. There'd been no word yet, but she felt lighter, like she'd written a piece of her heart and set it free. That night, after Hope had fallen asleep in her crib, Savannah and Grayson sat in the living room, soft jazz humming from an old speaker. A fresh batch of cookies, this time unburnt thanks to Savannah's intervention, rested on the table beside 2 glasses of wine. The scent of pine-scented candles mixed with the crisp autumn air drifting in through a cracked window. Grayson looked at her, something tender but tense in his eyes. "You know," he said quietly, "a year ago, I never thought I'd be here, in a tiny apartment, baking cookies with a little girl who loves drawing on my face." Savannah smiled, sipping her wine. "Yeah, and you're still terrible at baking, but she adores you, so I forgive you." He laughed, then stood, reaching for the speaker and turning off the music. Savannah frowned, about to ask what he was doing, when he dropped to one knee. From his pocket, he pulled a small velvet box. Her heart thudded, echoing that snowy night when he first kissed her. "Savannah Lewis," Grayson said, opening the box to reveal a simple silver ring set with a small pearl. "I love you, not because of Hope, though she's the light of my life, but because of you. You're the story I want to read over and over. You taught me how to love, how to stay, how to write chapters I never thought I could. Will you marry me?" Savannah covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks as she laughed through them. "You are the cheesiest male lead I've ever written," she said, voice trembling. "But yes, Grayson, I'll marry you." He slid the ring onto her finger and pulled her into an embrace, kissing her softly but deeply, as if to hold on to this moment forever. Savannah wrapped her arms around him, feeling his warmth. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid. She knew he would stay, not just for Hope, but for her. Later, they sat on the couch. Savannah nestled against his shoulder, absent-mindedly toying with the ring on her finger. "You know," she said, "I used to think love only existed in books. But you and Hope, you're real." Grayson kissed the top of her head. "And you're the best chapter I've ever lived." He looked out the window where moonlight washed over the park. "But next time you bake the cookies, I swear the oven hates me." She laughed, giving him a playful shove. "Deal, clumsy dad." Clara, who had come over to watch Hope, emerged from the kitchen pretending to wipe away tears. "You two are making me cry," she said, hugging them both. "But I'm so proud of you, Savannah. And Grayson, you're part of this family now." Grayson smiled, squeezing Savannah's hand tighter. He thought back to the blizzard night, the letter he wrote, the first time he held Hope. He had once been a man with nothing but penthouses and empty charm. Now in this small apartment, he had found something he never knew he was missing. A family. Late that night, as Grayson slept beside her, Savannah opened her laptop and reread the final chapter of her novel. Eliza, her character, had found happiness, not because the man beside her was perfect, but because they chose to write the story together. She added one final line. Eliza looked at the man she loved, and she knew, whatever the future held, they would write every page together. She closed the laptop, gazed at Hope sleeping peacefully in her crib, then at Grayson, breathing steadily beside her. Savannah smiled, switched off the light, and lay down next to him. The small apartment, the autumn wind outside, the warmth of her family. It was the happy ending she once thought only existed in books. Harper Lane stood before the towering iron gate of the Whitaker estate, chewing gum and dragging an old suitcase that looked like it had survived World War II. She glanced up at the three-story mansion with gleaming windows and muttered to herself, "If I break anything here, I'll probably have to sell a kidney to pay for it." But Harper wasn't the type to worry ahead. She lived by the motto, "Just wing it and deal with the mess later," which is exactly how she ended up here, about to work as a temporary housemaid for a rich lawyer she had never even met. The gate creaked open like something out of a horror movie, and Harper stepped inside, her wild red hair flying in the wind. She felt like a superhero marching into battle, minus the cape. The housekeeper, Mrs. Mildred, greeted her with a glare sharp enough to cut glass, as if Harper had dragged in a nest of rats with her. "You must be Harper Lane, right on time. But don't think that'll make the boss go easy on you," she said, her voice flat like she was reading an obituary. Harper smirked and shrugged. "I don't expect him to go easy. I just need him to pay me on time." Mrs. Mildred sniffed and led her down a marble-floored hallway, so shiny Harper feared she'd slip and faceplant. She avoided touching anything. Everything in the house looked more expensive than her combined student debt. "The boss is in his study. Take him his coffee. Black, no sugar, white porcelain cup. Don't mess it up," Mildred ordered, pointing at a silver tray on the kitchen counter. Harper nodded, but in her head she was thinking, black coffee, no sugar? This guy must feed off other people's misery. She carefully carried the tray and ascended the spiral staircase with the focus of an Olympic gymnast. But Harper being Harper, fate was never on her side. Just as she reached the final step, the study door flung open and a tall figure stormed out like a hurricane. "Oh crap," Harper yelped, the tray tipping, and the expensive white cup poured its contents straight onto the stack of papers in the man's hands. Time slowed. She watched the black coffee splatter across pristine white pages, heard the porcelain shatter on the floor, and felt the icy stare of the man piercing through her. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit. His slick-back dark hair revealed a high forehead and eyes colder than an Alaskan winter. This had to be Damon Whitaker, her boss, and she had just turned her first day into a full-blown disaster. "I'm sorry, oh my God, I didn't mean to," Harper stammered, dropping to her knees to pick up the broken pieces, trying not to look at the now ruined documents. "I'll pay for it." "Well, probably not, but I can mop the floor or do your laundry." Damon said nothing. He just stood there holding the soaked papers, his silence more terrifying than a lion's roar. Finally, his voice cut through the air, deep and cold as ice. "Who are you, and why did you just destroy several $1 million worth of documents?" Harper shot to her feet, hands on hips, completely forgetting her position. "Destroy? You came flying out like a race car. How was I supposed to dodge that? And what kind of documents are worth millions? Are they printed in gold?" Damon frowned, clearly not used to being talked back to. "You're the new maid? I told Mildred I didn't need another walking disaster." "Disaster?" Harper let out a laugh, even as her heart pounded with fear of being fired. "If I'm a disaster, you're a hazard zone. Who opens a door like they're fleeing a zombie apocalypse?" Damon stared at her, eyes practically burning holes through her. But Harper wasn't easily intimidated. She crossed her arms, tilted her chin, ready for verbal combat. In her mind, alarms blared. "Harper, you just argued with your boss. Congratulations, you're about to be unemployed." "What's your name?" Damon asked, still icy, but was that a flicker of curiosity? "Harper Lane. And you must be Damon Whitaker, right? The most notoriously uptight lawyer in all of New Jersey?" His lips twitched, like he almost smiled but held it back. "You're bold, Harper Lane. But next time you spill my coffee, I'm docking your pay." "Yes, sir," Harper said with syrupy sarcasm. "But next time, if you don't want your precious documents swimming in coffee, maybe don't barrel into me like a freight train." Damon didn't reply. He just shook his head and turned back into his study, leaving Harper standing amid broken porcelain and a pounding heart. She had survived her first battle with the boss, but she knew this was only the beginning. Damon Whitaker might not be easy to deal with, but Harper Lane wasn't the type to back down. "Game on, Mr. Lawyer," she thought, smirking. Inside the study, Damon sat down, eyeing the soggy paperwork and shaking his head. That redhead was a storm, impulsive, loud, and completely fearless. He hated chaos, but somehow that moment when she talked back, it had stirred something. For the first time in months, Damon Whitaker felt like this mansion wasn't just a cold, lifeless tomb. Harper Lane never imagined that her third day working at the Whitaker estate would turn into a full-blown dramatic comedy. After the coffee on the documents fiasco, she'd been trying her best to stay in maximum behave mode, meaning no more broken cups, no more sass with Damon, and absolutely no letting her wild red hair get tangled up in any new disasters. But Harper was Harper, and trouble followed her like metal to a magnet. That evening, the New Jersey air was cool, and the scent of freshly cut grass drifted into the kitchen through the open window. Harper was wiping down the counters, humming a cheesy pop song, swaying her dish towel like a stage prop. She liked moments like this, quiet, peaceful, when Mrs. Mildred had gone to bed and Damon, well, probably off conquering the world in his study. But peace didn't last. The front door burst open, followed by unsteady footsteps and a deep, raspy voice. "Lydia, you came back." Harper stopped humming and spun around. Damon Whitaker stood there, his blazer crooked, tie askew, and dark hair disheveled like he'd walked through a tornado. His usually sharp brown eyes were now dazed and glassy, like he'd downed an entire bottle of wine. Harper frowned. Who the heck is Lydia? And why is he looking at me like I'm his long-lost high school crush? "Sir, are you okay?" Harper asked cautiously, still clutching the dish towel like a makeshift shield. Damon staggered forward, the scent of wine trailing behind him, making Harper wrinkle her nose. "Okay, you're definitely drunk. Let me make you some coffee, all right?" But Damon didn't answer. He looked at her, no, through her, as if seeing someone else entirely. "Lydia," he murmured, voice soft as velvet, "I knew you'd come back. I always knew." And then before Harper could fully register what was happening, Damon stepped forward, placed a hand on her shoulder, and kissed her. Time froze. Harper stood there wide-eyed, her brain screaming, "What the actual hell?" His lips were warm, his breath tinged with wine, and for one split second, pure panic, she realized the kiss wasn't awful. That is, until she remembered he was her boss, and he thought she was someone else. Harper's impulsive instincts kicked in. She shoved Damon hard and smack. A sharp slap landed across his left cheek. He staggered back, hand on his face, the dreamy look in his eyes replaced by utter shock. What did you just do?" he stammered, sobering up a bit. "What did I do? You just kissed me without asking, you drunk maniac," Harper shouted, face flushed with a mix of fury and humiliation. She jabbed a finger at him, voice shaking. "I'm not Lydia or Linda or whoever made your poor heart sad. I'm Harper, your maid, and you just seriously crossed a line." Damon blinked like he was trying to piece together a broken memory. He looked at her, then at his own hand, then back at her again. "Harper?" he murmured as if discovering he'd landed on another planet. I kissed you." "Correct, and I slapped you because you deserved it." Harper folded her arms, chin tilted defiantly, even though her heart was beating like a war drum. "Now go to bed before I give you another one." Damon didn't say another word. He turned and stumbled up the stairs, leaving Harper in the kitchen, pulse racing and a strange flutter in her chest she couldn't quite name. She shook her head, muttering to herself, "I just slapped my boss. I'm definitely getting fired tomorrow." Brilliant job, Harper. Pure genius. The next morning, Harper walked into the kitchen like a prisoner walking to her sentence. She was fully prepared for Mrs. Mildred to summon her and deliver the death blow. Termination. Instead, she found Damon sitting at the breakfast table, a mug of black coffee in front of him, and a vivid red handprint still glowing on his left cheek. He wore a crisp white shirt, hair neatly combed, but his eyes looked complicated, not cold like usual, almost embarrassed. "Good morning, Miss Lane," Damon said, voice deep and slightly rough, like he'd been up all night fighting off a hangover. "Sit down. We need to talk." Harper swallowed hard and took a seat across from him, gripping the edge of the table. "If you're going to fire me, just say it. I'll pack in 5 minutes." Damon raised an eyebrow, a faint smirk brushing his lips, the first time she'd ever seen him smile, even if barely. "Fire you? Not planning on it. But we do need to clear the air about last night." Harper blushed but kept her guard up. "Clear the air. You kissed me. I slapped you. Crystal clear. And if you're expecting an apology for the slap, not happening." Damon took a sip of coffee, eyes locked on hers. "I don't want an apology. I apologize for my actions. I was drunk and mistook you for someone else. That wasn't my intention." Harper blinked, caught off guard by his sincerity. She had been bracing for a fight, but he was owning it? She cleared her throat, trying to hold her stern face. "Good. Then we're even. I'll forget it happened, and you should too. And for the love of all things decent, never call me Lydia again." Damon nodded, but his gaze lingered a bit too long. There was something in the way he looked at her that made Harper's neck feel warm. "You've got quite the slap, Harper Lane," he murmured, his voice low and almost teasing. "But I'm not sure I'll forget that moment so easily." Harper's mouth dropped open. Was he joking? Mr. Cold-Hearted Boss knew how to tease? She jumped to her feet, pointing at him. "Don't you dare flirt with me. I'm going to mop the floors. And next time, don't drink if you don't want to get slapped again." She spun on her heel, hiding the smile that threatened to escape. Damon Whitaker wasn't just a difficult lawyer. He was dangerous, in a way she had never been prepared for. And deep down she knew, last night's uninvited kiss had started a game. Neither of them was ready to quit. Meanwhile, Damon watched her walk away, his hand brushing his cheek. The sting was gone, but something else remained. Something strange. For the first time, this house didn't feel like just stone and silence. It felt alive. Harper Lane never imagined that a single slap would lead to the strangest contract of her life. After last night's uninvited kiss, she had braced herself for every possible scenario. Getting fired, getting sued, or worse, getting the kind of icy stares from Damon Whitaker that would make her quit on her own. But nope. This morning, when she walked into the study to clean, there he was, Damon sitting at his desk, pen in one hand, tapping the other against the surface, and with that look in his eyes. That look, like he was plotting world domination. "Miss Lane," he began, his voice calm and deep, far too composed, like a judge about to deliver a sentence. "We need to address what happened last night, professionally." Harper stopped dusting the bookshelf and turned to him, one hand on her hip. "Professionally? You kissed me. I slapped you. I'd say we're even. Or are you planning to sue me for assaulting my boss?" Damon raised an eyebrow, the faintest smirk brushing his lips, the kind that made Harper both confused and want to slap him again. "Sue you? No, I'm not that bored. But you did leave a handprint on my face. And I'm a lawyer. I don't like leaving debts unpaid, even if it's the debt of a slap." Harper blinked, unsure if she'd just heard him right. "Debt? Are you serious? I slapped you because you deserved it. If you want revenge, just fire me and stop playing games." Damon stood and walked toward her, tall and intimidating enough that Harper had to tilt her chin up to look at him. He stopped just a step away, close enough that she could smell his woody cologne, but not close enough for her to slap him again, even though she was tempted. "I'm not firing you," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "But I'm proposing a deal. You owe me for the slap, and I want you to pay it back with a kiss." Harper's mouth fell open. Her dustcloth hit the floor with a soft thud. She stared at him like he'd just declared he was from another planet. "What? Are you insane? A kiss is repayment? What is this? Some kind of low-budget soap opera?" Damon crossed his arms, expression as calm as if he'd just proposed a real estate deal. Not dramatic, very fair. You slapped me because I kissed you without asking. To balance things out, you'll give me a kiss. Brief, polite, and I'll consider us even. Otherwise, I might have to reconsider keeping you employed. Harper felt her face go red, equal parts fury and disbelief. She pointed a trembling finger at him. You're blackmailing me? I'm not some girl you can buy off with money or scare with threats. You really think I'm just going to kiss you because of this stupid deal? Damon tilted his head, that infuriating glint of amusement in his eyes. So you'd rather be fired? I thought you needed this job, Harper Lane. Or are you planning to sell a kidney to pay off your student loans? Harper bit her lip, cornered. She needed the money. She needed this job. And Damon clearly knew that. But kiss him? The idea made her shiver, and not entirely in a bad way, which was the most terrifying part. She inhaled deeply and said in a steady tone, Fine. One kiss, that's it. And you can never bring it up again. Clear? Damon nodded, the corner of his mouth lifting like he'd just won a major lawsuit. Crystal, but I'd like to add one clause. Every time you make a mistake, break something, forget something, argue with me, you owe me another kiss. Fair, right? Harper's eyes widened. It felt like she just signed a deal with the devil. You manipulative jerk. Fine, I agree. But don't think I'm letting you win so easily. I'll work so perfectly, you'll never get another chance. Damon smiled, an actual smile this time, revealing a small dimple on his right cheek. I look forward to the challenge, Miss Lane. The days that followed turned the Whitaker estate into a comedic battlefield of wits. Harper tried to work like a flawless machine, floors sparkling, towels aligned, coffee brewed to black no-sugar perfection. But she was Harper, and clumsiness lurked behind every corner. On day one, she accidentally knocked over the salt shaker on the dining table. Damon appeared instantly, notebook in hand, voice calm. Mistake number one. You know the terms. Harper clenched her jaw, face burning, marched over, and planted a lightning-fast kiss on his cheek. It felt like touching fire. There, happy now? Go away, boss man, she snapped before darting into the kitchen. Damon stood still, hand brushing his cheek, eyes gleaming with a feeling he didn't dare name. Day two, she forgot to close the window, and the breeze scattered papers all over his desk. Another kiss, this time on his forehead, because Harper refused to let him look into her eyes. You kiss like you're exacting revenge, Damon teased, making Harper nearly throw a dish towel at his face. By day three, Harper began to question herself. She stood in the staff bathroom, muttering to her reflection, Harper, what is wrong with you? Why are you enjoying this stupid deal? Each kiss, however quick, however reluctant, left a strange afterglow, like she was playing a dangerous game, and wasn't sure if she wanted to win or lose. Meanwhile, Damon sat in his study, gazing out the window, idly spinning his silver pen. He hated to admit it, but he was starting to look forward to Harper's mistakes. That red-headed whirlwind, with her razor-sharp comebacks and stubborn stare, was unraveling the tightly wound world he'd built. And for the first time in years, he didn't want to fix the chaos. Harper didn't know it yet, but to Damon, this little deal wasn't just a joke. It was a test, to see if she would run or stay, and deep down, he hoped she'd stay. Harper Lane stood in the kitchen, watering can in hand, eyes flicking toward Damon Whitaker's study like a spy plotting an infiltration. The Kisses payment contract had entered its second week, and she'd decided to turn the game on its head. If Damon thought he could manipulate her with that ridiculous little rule, he was in for a surprise. You want to play, Mr. Lawyer? Fine, let's see who holds the reins now. She smirked and accidentally overwatered Damon's beloved fern, letting a few droplets spill onto the shiny hardwood floor. Oops, she murmured with mock regret, already picturing Damon's reaction when he walked in, spotted her crimes, and demanded another kiss. Not that she liked kissing him. Definitely not. She just wanted to see how he'd react. That's all. Pure curiosity. Harper would never admit it out loud, but the deal was messing with her head. Every time she messed up and had to kiss Damon on the cheek, the forehead, once almost the lips, but she turned away just in time. She felt a jolt shoot down her spine. And Damon, that cold-blooded lawyer, always played it cool, but his eyes, oh, those eyes burned. She hated how fast her heart beat around him, and she hated even more how she'd started waiting for her own mistakes. Today, she decided to up the stakes. She deliberately left faint streaks of water on the dining table after wiping it down. She accidentally placed his coffee cup off-center, letting it sit directly on the wood instead of the coaster. Each small crime, a silent dare. What now, Whitaker? Gonna make me kiss you again? Or are you finally going to snap and fire me? Right on cue, Damon entered the room with that confident gait of a man who believed the world bent to his will. He wore a deep blue shirt, sleeves rolled up, forearms lean and strong, and Harper had to fight not to stare. His eyes scanned the table, landing instantly on her deliberate mistakes. "Miss Lane," he said, voice low and deliberate, "you did that on purpose, didn't you?" Harper crossed her arms and lifted her chin, playing the innocent. "Did what?" "I'm just a clumsy maid, remember? Isn't that what you always say?" Damon stepped closer, close enough that she caught a whiff of his signature woodsy cologne. He tilted his head slightly, his eyes gleaming with danger. "Water streaks on the glass, coffee cup not on its coaster, and I'd bet good money my fern is drowning. What kind of game are you playing, Harper?" Harper swallowed hard, heart pounding, but she refused to back down. "Game? I'm just doing my job. If you want to settle accounts, go ahead. One kiss, right? Let's get it over with. Cheek or forehead?" Damon chuckled, a deep, warm sound that almost made her drop the watering can. He shook his head, took a seat, and drummed his fingers on the table. "You think I'm that predictable? All right then, you committed 3 offenses today, but I'm not collecting now. I'm accumulating." "Accumulating?" Harper's eyes widened. She felt like she just walked into a trap. "This isn't a bank. You can't just collect kisses like they're supermarket reward points." "I can," Damon replied, lips curling into a sly smile. "I'm saving them. When the time comes, you'll pay. And Harper, I'm very good at collecting debts." Harper's jaw dropped. This guy's a lunatic. Not only was he making her kiss him, now he wanted to store them up. She pointed at him, voice trembling with fury. "You manipulative snake. Fine, keep your stupid tally. But I swear, I'll work so perfectly from now on, you'll never get the chance to collect anything again." Damon just smiled, sipped his coffee, and never took his eyes off her. "I look forward to that, Miss Lane." In the days that followed, Harper and Damon's revenge game entered a whole new phase. Tense, ridiculous, and weirdly addictive. Harper made small, intentional mistakes, folding napkins the wrong way, putting a dash of sugar in his black coffee, even though he never used sugar, or forgetting to straighten the throw blankets in the sitting room. Every time she'd stand with arms crossed, waiting, and Damon, true to his word, didn't demand kisses immediately. He simply pulled out his infamous little notebook and with maddening calm noted, "Mistake number 7, mistake number 8. Harper wanted to scream, "What is he, running a kiss bank?" But what really drove her insane was how much she had started noticing him. The way his brow furrowed when he read, how he tapped his fingers when deep in thought, and how he always left a corner of his sandwich untouched because he hated crusts. She hated noticing those things, and she really hated how she couldn't stop. And each time she did pay, usually with a kiss on the cheek, the air between them shifted. It wasn't just a joke anymore. Something about it felt real. One evening, Harper was wiping down the living room windows when Damon walked in, infamous notebook in hand. "Miss Lane," he said in that low voice, "I believe it's time we settle part of your debt." Harper turned around, heart pounding. She wiped her hands on her apron and tried to look defiant. "Settle? Are you sure? Because my kisses pack a punch. Don't want another red cheek, do you?" Damon stepped closer than usual, eyes locked on hers. "I'll survive, but this time I want to change the rules. Not the cheek, not the forehead. You know what I want." Harper's face flushed, her skin hot like the room had turned into an oven. She backed up until she hit the glass. "You? You're crazy. I'm not kissing you on the lips. That wasn't part of the deal." Damon froze just a step away, and for the first time she saw hesitation in his eyes. He exhaled slowly and stepped back, slipping his hands into his pockets. "You're right. It wasn't in the deal. But Harper, do you have any idea what you're doing to me?" Harper blinked, caught off guard. "Doing to you? I'm just doing my job and arguing with you." Damon shook his head, that faint, crooked smile returning, but this time tinged with something sadder. "You make me laugh. You make me look forward to each day, and I hate it because I don't know how to handle not being in control." Harper froze, unsure what to say. Her heart pounded wildly, and for the first time she wondered, what exactly is this game we're playing, and why don't I want it to end? She cleared her throat and turned away. "Go to bed, Mr. Lawyer. Tomorrow I'll mess up way worse. Give you an excuse." She didn't look back, only nodded, hiding the small smile tugging at her lips. She knew this game had gone far beyond a silly deal, and no matter how much she tried to deny it, she was falling into her own trap. Harper Lane never imagined she'd be standing in a torrential downpour on the outskirts of New Jersey, soaked to the bone, clutching a bag of dripping groceries like a defeated warrior. Rain streamed down her face as she looked up at the gray sky and muttered, "Perfect, Harper. Not only are you working for a lunatic lawyer, but now you're starring in a low-budget tragedy." It had all started with a simple errand. Go to the store and pick up ingredients for dinner, per Mrs. Mildred's request. Harper had checked the weather forecast. Sunny, 75 degrees. Perfect. So she'd confidently left in a t-shirt, jeans, and her old sneakers, umbrella nowhere in sight. But New Jersey, in a spectacular act of betrayal, had transformed the peaceful afternoon into a downpour within 2 hours. By the time Harper exited the supermarket, it was raining buckets. Still, with her trademark stubbornness, she refused to call a cab. "It's only a 15-minute walk. I can handle it," she told herself. Now she was paying the price. Grocery bags soaked through, red hair plastered to her face, and every step making a humiliating squelch from her waterlogged shoes. She ducked under a shop awning, shivering, and tried to call Mrs. Mildred for help. Of course, her phone, like everything else, had betrayed her too. Dead battery. "Fantastic," she groaned, staring down the blurry road toward the Whitaker estate. "I'm going to catch pneumonia, and Damon's probably going to write it off as Harper Lane owes one kiss for wetting the floor." Just as she was imagining her dismissal for staining the rugs, a pair of headlights cut through the rain. A sleek black SUV pulled over beside her, and the door swung open. Out stepped Damon Whitaker, holding a large black umbrella, looking like he'd just walked out of a board meeting. He wore a long coat, his hair tousled by the wind, and his eyes, oh, those eyes, were stern and unreadable, making Harper unsure whether to bolt or stand still. "Miss Lane," he called over the sound of the rain, his voice deep and steady. "Are you planning to stand there until you turn into a fish?" Harper crossed her arms, trying to act defiant, even as her teeth chattered. "I'm fine. It's just rain. What are you doing here? Following me?" Damon raised an eyebrow and stepped forward, holding the umbrella over her. Rainwater poured off the edges, but he didn't seem to notice. His expression was half annoyed, half exasperated. "Following? I was driving home and saw you standing there like a drowned cat. Get in the car before you make me responsible for your hospital bill." Harper wanted to argue. She always wanted to argue. But the cold had worn down her fight. She shot him a glare, hugged the grocery bag tighter, and climbed into the passenger seat. Inside it was warm. The scent of leather and Damon's cologne mingled in the air, both comforting and confusing. He slid into the driver's seat and tossed her a towel from the back. "Dry off. You're soaking my car." "Yes, sir," Harper replied in mock obedience, but she couldn't help smirking when she caught the twitch of a smile on his lips as he shook his head. The drive home was quiet. Only the sound of rain on the windows and the hum of the engine filled the space. Harper stared out at the blurred city lights, trying to focus on the raindrops sliding down the glass. But her mind kept drifting back to Damon. The cold-hearted lawyer who once demanded kisses as punishment, now showing up like some grumpy knight in the rain. What kind of game is he playing, she wondered. But her heart whispered something she didn't want to hear. You don't want it to stop, do you? When they got back to the estate, Harper stumbled into the kitchen, still shivering. She set the grocery bag down and reached for the kettle, planning to make some tea when Damon appeared at the doorway, just as soaked as she was after giving her the umbrella. He slipped off his coat, revealing a white dress shirt soaked through and clinging to his chest, and Harper immediately turned away to avoid distractions. Go shower, he ordered, his voice leaving no room for debate. I don't want you getting sick. Mrs. Mildred would kill me if we lost staff. Harper smirked, ready with a snarky comeback, until she sneezed. Loud and totally unladylike. She clapped a hand over her mouth, face turning crimson, while Damon laughed, not his usual dry chuckle, a real warm laugh, deep and genuine, complete with a dimple on his right cheek. Harper froze. It was the first time she'd ever seen him laugh like that, and she was staring like an idiot. What's so funny? She snapped, flustered. You, Damon replied, still grinning as he stepped closer. You sneeze like a kitten, but try so hard to act tough. Don't you ever get tired, Harper Lane? Harper's mouth fell open. She had no idea how to respond. She was shaking, not just from the cold, but from the way he was looking at her now. His eyes weren't cold. They were warm, familiar, dangerous. She backed into the counter, mumbling, I'm going to shower. Stop standing there grinning like an idiot. But before she could escape, Damon leaned in and kissed her. This wasn't like the kiss in the hallway. It wasn't drunken or mistaken. It was slow, deliberate, and soft enough to make Harper's brain short-circuit. She stood frozen, her fingers gripping the edge of the counter, heart hammering. When he finally pulled away, his eyes stayed locked on hers, and there was a rare flicker of hesitation in them. That wasn't for a debt, he murmured, voice husky. That was because I wanted to. Harper blinked, still stunned. She wanted to scream, slap him, run away, but all she could do was stammer, You're insane! I'm going to shower! She bolted toward the bathroom, leaving Damon behind with a faint, unreadable smile. In the steamy silence of the bathroom, under the hot water, Harper covered her face and whispered, You're in trouble, Harper. You just let your boss kiss you. And worse, you liked it. She didn't know if their little revenge game had crossed the line. But one thing was certain. That kitchen kiss hadn't been a mistake. It was a confession from both of them. Meanwhile, Damon sat in his study, spinning his silver pen and staring out at the rain-soaked window. He had just broken his own rules, and for once, he didn't want to fix it. Harper Lane, with her red hair and ridiculous sneeze, was dismantling walls he'd spent years building. And deep down, he already knew. He wanted her to finish the job. Are you still following the story? Please leave your thoughts on the story in the comments below. All your comments are the motivation for us to create better. Harper Lane stood in the Whitaker Estate's storage room, dustbrush in hand, but her mind was far from the musty boxes stacked around her. Last night's kiss in the kitchen, the real kiss from Damon, was still playing on a loop in her head, sweet and maddening like a song stuck on repeat. She muttered to herself, What is wrong with you, Harper? He's your boss, a cold, manipulative lawyer, and God, why does he have to be such a good kisser? She swept harder, as if she could brush away the tangled mess of feelings swirling inside her. Since that kiss, Harper had avoided Damon all morning. She'd made excuses to clean the least trafficked areas of the house. Basement, storage rooms, anywhere he wouldn't be. But every creak of a door or sound of footsteps made her jump, heart pounding, half expecting him to appear behind her and do something. Kiss her again. Fire her for not slapping him like before? She didn't know, and the not knowing was driving her insane. While dusting a high shelf, she accidentally knocked down an old box. It burst open, scattering documents, photographs, and a small silver ring that rolled across the floor. She knelt to pick it up, but her eyes caught on a photograph, one that made her freeze, It was Damon, younger with shorter hair, smiling wide, so wide she almost didn't recognize him, his arm around a beautiful blonde woman. They stood in front of a beach at sunset, glowing in the fading light. Harper frowned, unsettled by this version of Damon that radiated warmth instead of frost. She turned the photo over. In neat handwriting, it read, Damon and Lydia, summer 2020, forever. Harper swallowed hard, her chest tightening. Lydia. There it was again. That name he had mumbled in his drunken haze. Now it wasn't just a name. It was a person, a ghost, a perfect memory frozen in time. She didn't want to pry, really, but she couldn't stop. She pulled out another paper from the box, a printed article dated 2022, Young Attorney Damon Whitaker cancels wedding 1 week before the ceremony. The piece detailed how Damon, at the height of his career, had suddenly called off his wedding to interior designer Lydia Hamilton. No official reason, just rumors. She left him. He couldn't commit, or they couldn't make it work. Harper read the words with a sinking feeling in her stomach. So he'd had a fiancée, and she'd broken his heart. She gently returned everything to the box, except the silver ring, which sat cold and heavy in her palm. She imagined Damon placing it on Lydia's finger, imagined him smiling like in that photo, and suddenly she felt small. What am I to him? A clumsy maid, a joke wrapped in a kiss contract. He still loved Lydia, didn't he? That afternoon, Harper had no choice but to face him when he called her into the study to deliver his coffee. She entered with a tray, carefully composed, forcing her face into a mask of calm. Damon sat behind his desk, eyes on his laptop, but when she placed the cup down, he looked up, his gaze locking onto her. You've been avoiding me all day, he said, not as a question, but a fact. Harper shrugged, pretending to fuss with the saucer. Avoiding? I've just been working. You want the roof scrubbed too? I'll do it. Damon stood, circling the desk until he was in front of her. He towered over her, his presence making her want to step back. But she didn't. Harper, he said, his voice gentler than she expected. Are you upset about last night? Her cheeks flushed at the memory of the kiss, but she recovered quickly. Upset? I'm just busy. And you should be grateful I didn't slap you again. She tilted her chin, defiant, but her eyes flicked, unintentionally, to his hand. She imagined the silver ring once being there. Damon frowned, clearly sensing something different in her. What's going on? You're not acting like yourself. Harper forced a smile. I'm fine. I just found something in the storage room. A photo. You and Lydia. She hadn't planned to say it, but the words spilled out like water breaching a dam. She was your fiancée, wasn't she? The one you called out for when you were drunk? Damon stiffened, his expression darkening. For a moment, Harper thought he'd lash out, but instead he exhaled slowly, sat back down, and rubbed his temple. You're curious, aren't you? He said tiredly. Yes, Lydia was my fiancée. She left me a week before the wedding because she wanted a different life. Freedom. No commitments. He paused, eyes distant. I don't blame her, but I did learn something from that. Never trust something that pretends to be intimate. Harper stood silently, heart sinking. She wanted to crack a joke, tease him like always, but she couldn't. Instead, she stepped forward and did something she'd never done before. She placed a hand on his shoulder, a small, quiet gesture of care. I'm not Lydia, she said, voice low but steady. I'm loud, clumsy, and definitely not graceful. But I'm real, Damon, and if you want me here, I'll stay. Damon looked up, his eyes softer than she'd ever seen them. He took her hand and gave a gentle tug, guiding her to sit across from him. Harper Lane, he said, voice hoarse, you're the most real person I've ever met, and that's why I can't stop thinking about you. Harper blinked, her face burning. She wanted to pull away, wanted to run, but she didn't. Instead, she offered him a shy, awkward smile. Well, good, because I'm not planning to let you forget me, Mr. Lawyer. From that day forward, Harper began caring for Damon in quieter, more thoughtful ways. She made his eggs with crispy edges, just how he liked them. She folded his newspaper neatly and placed it beside his coffee, though she still pretended to grumble. And Damon, though never one for words, began leaving subtle signs in return. A quiet, thank you, a lingering glance, a brush of fingers when she handed him a glass of water. But in Harper's heart, one question still lingered like a shadow. Has he really forgotten Lydia? Or was she just a stand-in, a distraction from a wound that never truly healed? She didn't have the answer, but she chose to stay, not because of the deal, but because she wanted to see him smile. Not like in the old photo, but because of her. Harper Lane stood in the kitchen, knife in hand, trying to chop carrots into neat slices, but each cut landed harder than it needed to, as if she were venting her frustrations on the innocent vegetables. The past few days had thrown her and Damon Whitaker into a dangerous rhythm. Not quite romantic, but definitely no longer just boss and maid. The lingering touches, long stares, and those so-called debt repayment kisses had her heart in a constant state of chaos. Breathe, Harper, she told herself. He's your boss. You're the clumsy, red-headed maid. Nothing more. She hummed a cheesy pop song to drown out her swirling thoughts when the doorbell rang. Harper frowned, glancing at the clock. Who's here at this hour? She muttered. Mrs. Mildred was out shopping, and Damon was in his study, which meant Harper had to answer. Drying her hands on her apron, she made her way to the front door, fully expecting a delivery guy or a nosy neighbor. What she found instead stopped her cold. A woman stood on the porch, so beautiful Harper momentarily forgot how to blink. Tall, with glossy blonde hair, a fitted emerald dress, and heels that sparkled like they'd stepped off a runway. Her blue eyes scanned Harper from head to toe, accompanied by a cool, poised smile. Hi, she said sweetly, her voice polished but icy. I'm looking for Damon Whitaker. Is he home? Harper felt like someone had just thrown a bucket of cold water over her. There was something disturbingly familiar about this woman. And then, like a bolt of lightning, Lydia Hamilton, Damon's ex-fiancée, the woman from the photo in the storage room. Harper's heart clenched, but she straightened her spine, raising her chin. He's busy. And you are? The woman's smile widened, slightly smug. I'm Lydia Hamilton, an old friend of Damon's. I need to speak with him. It's personal. Harper crossed her arms, trying to hide the heat rising in her chest. Friend? Pretty sure ex-fiancé is more accurate. But sorry, he's unavailable. Leave a message and I'll pass it along. Lydia blinked, clearly not used to being brushed off. You're the maid, right? No need to be so defensive. I just want to talk. To apologize and maybe see if we can start over. It felt like a punch to the gut. Start over? This woman, who had left Damon before their wedding, was back, all glossy smiles and soft apologies, hoping to take him back. Harper wanted to slam the door. Instead, she forced a tight smile. I'll let him know. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. Lydia handed her a shiny business card. Thanks. Tell him to call me, soon. She turned and walked away, leaving Harper gripping the card like she wanted to crush it into dust. That evening, Harper could barely hold herself together. She stood in the living room pretending to fold napkins, but her hands trembled. Every time she thought of Lydia's perfect smile, her stomach twisted. When Damon walked in and shrugged off his coat, his eyes searched for her immediately. Harper, he said gently, you okay? You look like you're about to tear those napkins in half. Harper turned to him, keeping her voice cool but sharp. Okay, I'm great. Oh, by the way, someone came by today, Lydia Hamilton. She threw the business card onto the table. She said to call her, wants to, and I quote, start over. She turned away, her voice trembling. If you want to go back to her, go ahead. I don't care. Damon picked up the card, his expression darkening. Lydia, he muttered, voice flat. He stepped toward Harper and caught her wrist before she could storm off. Harper, stop! His tone was firm, not angry. You think I want her back? You're wrong. I turned her down last week when she called. I don't want her. I don't need her. Harper blinked, a tear slipping down her cheek before she could stop it. Then why did she come? Why does she think you'll forgive her? You, You still have her picture, Damon. I saw it. Damon pulled her close, brushing the tear away with his thumb. That picture is the past. I kept it to remind myself not to make the same mistakes again. Harper, don't you get it? You're the one I want. And then, before she could answer, he kissed her. Not a debt kiss, not a tease. A deep, intense kiss that left her breathless, her fingers curling into his shirt as her heart threatened to burst. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. Don't go, he whispered. Stay with me, Harper. She didn't answer, just nodded, tears mixing with a quiet smile. That night in Damon's bedroom, wrapped in his arms and quiet promises, Harper felt like the world had narrowed down to just the two of them. She forgot about Lydia, forgot about the deal, forgot about the fear. There was only Damon, and her, and the feeling that she had finally found where she belonged. The next morning, Harper woke with a ridiculous smile on her face. She peeked at Damon, still asleep, hair messy, his expression softer than she'd ever seen it. Slipping out of bed, she decided to make breakfast. I may not be the perfect woman, but I can make a damn good piece of toast, she thought, skipping down to the kitchen. She prepared a tray, Earl Grey tea, his favorite, and carefully made her way upstairs to his study. But as she neared the door, she froze. Through the slight crack, she saw Lydia. She was hugging Damon, arms around his neck, head resting on his chest. And Damon, he wasn't pushing her away. Harper's heart shattered. The tray crashed to the floor, shattering porcelain and scattering tea. Damon spun around. Harper, he called, shoving Lydia off him. But she was already running. Harper, wait! He chased after her, but she was faster. She burst out the front door, tears blurring her vision. I'm such an idiot. He still loves her. This was all a game. She ran to her tiny apartment, wrote a letter of resignation, and shoved it into the estate's mailbox before leaving. It read, I've paid all the kisses I owed, Damon. You don't owe me anything. I hope you're happy. With Lydia. But as she walked away, her heart heavy and hollow, she knew she'd left a part of herself behind in that mansion. A part she'd never get back. Harper Lane sat curled up in her tiny apartment, clutching a mug of lukewarm cocoa, her eyes swollen from crying all day. The peeling yellow walls and creaky twin bed had never felt so suffocating. She stared at the resignation letter she'd scrawled in haste, the handwriting as messy as her heart had been when she wrote, I've paid all my kisses, Damon. You don't owe me anything. I wish you happiness. With Lydia. Now she wanted to tear it up. But it was already in the Whitaker estate's mailbox, and Harper Lane wasn't the kind of girl who picked up her own broken pieces. She took a sip of her cold cocoa, winced and muttered, Brilliant, Harper. Fall for your boss? Let your heart shatter just because you saw him hugging his ex? Congrats. You're officially the lead in a bad soap opera. The image of Damon and Lydia in the study, her arms around his neck, her head on his chest, was burned into her memory like a fresh wound. She'd run from everything, her job, the kiss contract, and the heart she left behind in that mansion. But what she didn't know was that, across the city, Damon Whitaker stood before his bedroom mirror, his hair disheveled, eyes dark from sleeplessness. He clenched his phone, staring at Harper's number for the 10th time, but still couldn't bring himself to call. She thinks I chose Lydia, he muttered. That stubborn redhead. Why didn't she let me explain? He slammed his fist lightly against the wall, furious with himself. Lydia had shown up unannounced that morning, hugging him before he could react. And right at that moment, Harper had walked in. 1 second of bad timing, and he'd lost her. That night, it rained in New Jersey. Not the dramatic storm from the night he'd held an umbrella over her. Just a gentle drizzle, enough to soak a shirt and drag down the soul. Harper was sprawled across her bed, trying to laugh at a late-night sitcom, when a knock echoed through the apartment. She frowned, groaning, If that's the landlady asking for rent, I swear I'll fake my death. Dragging herself to the door, she opened it, and almost collapsed from shock. Damon Whitaker stood there, rain dripping from his dark hair, his white shirt soaked and clinging to him like something straight out of a romance novel gone wrong. In his hand, the infamous little notebook, the Kiss debt ledger. Harper crossed her arms, forcing herself to stay calm even though her heart was pounding. "What are you doing here? Wrong address, Mr. Lawyer?" Damon didn't smile, didn't throw a witty retort. He stepped closer until the scent of his cologne mingled with the rain in the air. "Harper," he rasped, "you're wrong. About Lydia, about me, about everything." Harper tilted her chin up, tears threatening to spill again. "Wrong? I saw her hugging you, Damon. Don't tell me it was a misunderstanding. I'm not that naive. If you want her, go. I quit. We're done." Damon shook his head and held up the notebook like it was Exhibit A. "You think I want Lydia? She came to apologize. I said no. I pushed her away the moment you walked in, but you ran off before I could say a word." He opened the book, showing her the neatly written list. "You've paid all your debts, 17 kisses. But the truth is, I don't want you to stop. I want you to pay more. Forever." Harper blinked, stunned. She looked at the notebook, then into his eyes and felt her walls beginning to crack. "You're insane," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You think I'm just going to believe you? Run into your arms like some Hallmark heroine?" Damon finally smiled, just a soft, crooked grin, revealing that damn dimple. "Number, I know you'll yell at me first, and I like that." He stepped closer, brushing a wet strand of hair from her cheek. "Harper Lane, you're the loudest, clumsiest, most stubborn woman I've ever met. But you make me laugh. You make me feel again. And I'm not letting you go over a stupid misunderstanding." Harper stood frozen, tears slipping down her cheeks. She wanted to shove him away, scream, punch his shoulder. Instead, she did what she did best, act on instinct. She rose on her toes, grabbed his collar, and kissed him, hard, furious, and full of everything she'd held back. Right there at the door, with the rain falling and an old neighbor peeking through the curtains, Damon pulled her in, kissing her back like he couldn't bear to lose her again. When they finally broke apart, Harper was breathless, pointing a finger at him. "You're an idiot, Damon Whitaker. If I ever see Lydia, or anyone, hug you again, I swear I'll slap you into next week." Damon laughed, pressing his forehead to hers. "I accept, but if you keep paying kisses every day, I might just stop collecting." Harper narrowed her eyes, but she was smiling. "More kisses? Fine, but you're going to have to earn them, Mr. Lawyer." She tugged him inside and slammed the door shut behind them, leaving the rain and the rest of the world outside. Behind the curtain, the neighbor muttered, "Young people these days, absolutely unhinged." In the cramped little apartment, Harper and Damon sat cross-legged on the bed, the kiss ledger open between them. Harper flipped through the pages, laughing at each silly offense. Spilled coffee, open windows, mismatched towels. They laughed together, as if yesterday's heartbreak had been just a bad dream. Harper didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't running anymore. And Damon, with eyes that saw her like she was the whole damn world, wasn't letting her go. Harper Lane stood in front of the mirror in the Whitaker mansion's bedroom, running her fingers through her frizzy red hair and muttering to her reflection, "You're fine, Harper. You're not signing a contract with the devil, just with a ridiculously attractive, infuriating lawyer who kisses like he rewired your brain." She grimaced at herself, trying to suppress the goofy grin threatening to spill across her face. After that rainy night outside her apartment, after that kiss in front of the nosy neighbor, everything between her and Damon had changed. The kiss debt contract was dead. There was no more boss and maid, only Harper and Damon, two stubborn people trying to share a roof without killing or kissing each other every 5 minutes. That morning, Damon had summoned her to the study with a face so serious she'd almost fled. "We need an official meeting," he'd declared. She had rolled her eyes. "Official? What, are you docking my pay for breaking the 10th coffee cup?" He only smiled, that devilish, dimpled grin that made her want to kiss him and punch him at the same time, and told her to bring her cooperative spirit. Now she was dressed in clean jeans and a t-shirt, staring herself down in the mirror like she was going into a courtroom. "Whatever he's planning, you're not letting him win easily." She stepped into the study where Damon sat behind his desk in a crisp white shirt, holding what looked suspiciously like a legal document. Afternoon sunlight streamed in, glinting off his dark hair, and Harper had to force herself not to stare. "Have a seat, Miss Lane," he said in that deep professional tone, though the sparkle in his eyes gave him away. Harper folded her arms and dropped into the chair across from him, chin lifted. "Call me Harper. And what's this? Don't tell me you're making me sign a lifelong housemaid contract because I will flip this table." Damon chuckled and slid the paper across to her. "Not a maid contract. I'm offering a new position, full-time partner in crime, also known as legal wife." He paused, looking straight into her eyes. "What do you say, Harper? Sign this contract, and we'll officially be legal enemies forever." Harper's jaw dropped. Her hands shook slightly as she picked up the paper. It wasn't a real legal document. It was a handwritten page titled Long-Term Cohabitation Agreement between Damon Whitaker and Harper Lane. It included such terms as Clause 1, Harper must sass Damon at least 3 times a day. Clause 2, Damon has the right to kiss Harper anytime he wants, unless he wants to get slapped. Clause 3, all arguments must be resolved with a kiss. At the bottom, Damon had already signed with a note, "Awaiting your signature, read." Harper laughed, her eyes shimmering. She shook her head, looking at him with a mix of affection and exasperation. "You're insane, Damon Whitaker. A legal wife? You think I'll sign this just because you wrote it in expensive ink? You better be on one knee first." Before she could blink, Damon stood, rounded the desk, and dropped to one knee faster than she could process. From his pocket, he pulled out a small velvet box and opened it to reveal a simple, shining silver ring. "Harper Lane," he said, voice husky, "I won't promise you the world, because I know you'd argue the world's not big enough. But I promise to make you laugh every day, to survive every slap you throw, and to love you for the rest of my life. Will you marry me?" Harper blinked as tears spilled down her cheeks, though her tone remained playfully defiant. "You sneaky bastard, using a ring to bribe me?" She grabbed the pen from his hand, scribbled in her own addition to the contract. Clause 4, Damon must make Sunday breakfast every week and is not allowed to complain if Harper spills the coffee. She signed her name with a dramatic flourish, tossed the pen aside, and yanked him to his feet. "Now kiss me, future husband, before I change my mind." Damon didn't wait. He pulled her close and kissed her, slow, deep, and filled with all the affection and laughter that defined them. Harper wrapped her arms around his neck, giggling mid-kiss. Because this was them. Loving, fighting, teasing, and kissing like the world was theirs. In the weeks that followed, Harper and Damon officially moved in together at the Whitaker estate. No longer boss and maid, but partners. Legal and emotional. Harper still spilled coffee, often on purpose now, and Damon still pretended to keep tally in that old kiss ledger. They bickered constantly about lights left on, socks on the floor, and who ate the last cookie. But every fight ended the same way, with a kiss per contract terms. One night, curled up on the couch, Harper resting her head on his shoulder, she whispered, "You know, I never thought I'd fall for a stiff lawyer, but you make me laugh, and that's why I stayed." Damon kissed her forehead and smiled. "And you make me feel alive, Harper. Every single day." He pulled out the notebook and pretended to write. "Mistake number 18. Harper Lane made me love her too much. Penalty, 1 immediate kiss." Harper rolled her eyes but kissed him anyway. "Consider it paid early, Mr. Lawyer. Don't push your luck." Outside, New Jersey was calm, and inside the Whitaker estate, 2 former adversaries were building something real, one kiss at a time. Harper knew now. This contract wasn't a joke. It was a promise, and she'd sign it again every day, as long as Damon was the one beside her. Harper Lane stood before the mirror in the cozy guest room next to the Whitaker estate's garden, smoothing down the simple yet elegant white wedding dress she'd picked. It wasn't frilly or flashy, just a delicate layer of tulle with subtle lace trim, but it made her look like she'd stepped out of a dream. A dream belonging to a clumsy, smart-mouthed girl who still couldn't believe she was marrying a lawyer. She looked at her reflection, soft waves of red hair, eyes wide with nerves, and whispered, "You've got this, Harper. You're not about to face the devil in court. Just a ridiculously handsome lawyer who kisses too well for your own sanity." She let out a laugh, but her heart thudded like it was trying to leap out of her chest. Today was her wedding day, to Damon Whitaker. A small ceremony, just a few close friends, Mrs. Mildred still eyeing Harper like she might shatter the entire world, and a sun-drenched backyard in New Jersey. Harper had never wanted a grand affair, just Damon, a ring, and a promise they'd keep loving and bickering in their own ridiculous way. Damon, ever the meticulous lawyer, had agreed with zero resistance. "You want a garden wedding? Fine, but I'm not letting you destroy the cake," he'd teased. Harper had glared at him with enough heat to toast the wedding favors. Taking a deep breath, Harper clutched her white carnation bouquet and stepped out. The garden was decorated simply, white ribbons tied to tree branches, a rustic table of sweets and wine, and a flower-strewn path leading to where Damon stood. Black suit, neatly styled hair, that signature dimpled smile. He looked like a man straight out of a movie. Harper nearly broke into a sprint, but she was still Harper, and she never did things the normal way. As the acoustic version of their favorite love song played, Harper walked down the aisle with as much grace as she could muster, which wasn't much. She spotted Damon and called out under her breath, "Ready to get slapped for life, Mr. Lawyer?" Laughter rippled through their friends, and Damon shook his head, smiling like she was his entire universe. "Go ahead and try, Miss Lane," he replied. "But remember, every slap costs you a kiss. Still part of the contract." Harper smirked and reached him, handing her bouquet to her best friend. The officiant, an old friend of Damon's, began the ceremony, but the two of them only had eyes for each other, exchanging glances full of affection and mischief. When it came time for vows, Harper jumped in first, her voice emotional yet unmistakably Harper. "Damon Whitaker, I vow to love you, argue with you, and spill coffee on your legal briefs whenever I feel like it. I vow to make you laugh daily, whether by annoying you or kissing you when you least expect it. And if Lydia or anyone else ever hugs you again, I swear I'll slap you, and then kiss you to make up for it." Her voice cracked as she smiled through tears. "I love you, you ridiculous man." Damon laughed softly, gripping her hands tighter. "Harper Lane, I vow to survive every slap, every shattered cup, and every argument I'll inevitably lose. I vow to make you breakfast every Sunday, even if you manage to burn the kitchen down. And I vow to love you, not because you paid off your kiss debt, but because you're the only person who's ever made me want to live honestly." He leaned in and whispered just for her, "I love you, Red." Their friends erupted in applause. Mrs. Mildred dabbed her eyes, while muttering something about Harper needing to learn to mop properly, and the officiant grinned. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Now kiss her quick before she changes her mind and slaps you." Damon pulled Harper close and kissed her, slow, deep, and filled with the kind of love only two stubborn souls could create. Harper wrapped her arms around his neck, and when they broke apart, she whispered, "That was a prepaid kiss, Mr. Husband. Don't even think about asking for another yet." The rest of the reception was full of awkward dancing. Harper nearly knocked over the cake. Jokes about kiss contracts and secret glances between bride and groom that said, "I can't believe you're mine." At sunset, they sat side by side on a wooden bench, holding hands as string lights glowed above the garden. "You know," Harper murmured, head on his shoulder, "I used to think love had to be quiet, soft, like a movie. But with you, it's loud, chaotic, and better than any film I've ever seen." Damon kissed her hair and smiled. "Love isn't always gentle, Harper. But if it makes you laugh every day, it's worth keeping forever." Harper grinned, raised her hand to fake a slap, but instead tugged him in for another kiss. "That's the softest slap you'll ever get, lawyer. You better treasure it." They laughed, held each other tighter, and in that moment, the Whitaker estate wasn't just a house full of rules, broken cups, and kiss tallies. It was home, where two ridiculous, reckless, and completely in love souls would keep arguing, kissing, and loving forever. Love isn't always soft.